Welcome. My name's Naveed Chowdhury. I'm Head of Campaigns at Results UK, and I'd like to welcome everybody on the call tonight. Normally, our Executive Director, Aaron Oxley, chairs these meetings, but he's not very well this evening, so I'm afraid you've got me instead. So I hope you'll enjoy the discussion, and we'll be talking about the importance of our campaign action this month, which is to arrange to meet your MP to enlist their support for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, TB and malaria. Before we get onto the subject of the call, I'll just go through the usual housekeeping messages. We're recording this call and we'll post the recording on our website for anyone who's missed it to watch later. So please do feel free to turn your video off if you'd rather not be in the recording. When we post that up, we'll include any links or resources that have been shared in the chat box during the call. And we're also using automatic captions. So if you want to, you can turn that on or off using the Zoom menu bar. Please keep yourself muted during the call if you can. And if you've got any questions or comments, please do use the chat box and we'll try to respond to you there. If you're new, please feel free to introduce yourself, either by turning on your microphone and just saying hello, or by using the chat box. And we'd love to hear where you're calling from, but it's also completely okay not to introduce yourself if you prefer. Okay. So I will start, and as Aaron always does, with an update on what's happening in the world of international development and how it affects the works of Results. I'm sure you'll all been following the terrible humanitarian situation in Ukraine caused by the Russian invasion. As Aaron was mentioning last month, obviously Results is not a humanitarian response organisation, so we aren't working directly on this. And for this reason, we took the decision not to put up a statement about it on our website. I don't know if any of you might have been looking for one. However, unusually, we do have the Results logo appearing on a full page advert in the Times on this topic last week. And we're going to link to a social media post in the chat box so that you can see how that looked. As you can imagine, taking adverts out in the Times is an expensive business, and luckily we didn't have to pay for this. A big thank you is owed to our friends at Save the Children who coordinated this letter. So we put our names to this joint agency open letter, calling on the Chancellor, Rishi Sunak, not to pit international development against the UK's support for Ukraine. As many of you have probably seen, there have been calls in the media and in Parliament for resources to support Ukraine to come from the UK's Official Development Assistance, or ODA, budget, which, coming after last year's swingeing cuts, would reduce even further the resources available to tackle poverty around the world. That view says that we can only afford to do either one thing or another, but we know that that's not right. Government spending is always about political priorities. We believe that the UK can and should support humanitarian relief efforts in Ukraine and also continue to support international development efforts around the world to help people gain their rights to health, education and economic opportunity. And with the Ukraine crisis already having severe economic impacts as fuel prices rise, and with risks to the global supply of cereal crops, because both Ukraine and Russia are major exporters, we can already see the wider global impact of the crisis unfolding, not just within Ukraine, which, as always happens, will impact most severely on the most vulnerable people. So we, together with 12 other agencies, have publicly called on the Chancellor to return the UK's ODA budget to 0.7% of our national income sooner rather than later, and not to further restrict the availability of funding to tackle global poverty, as some people are suggesting, on the basis of that particular crisis. Next, I want to mention the opportunity we had last month to highlight the importance of tackling TB, or tuberculosis, which, as many of you know, is the world's second deadliest infectious disease after COVID, yet which has had a tiny fraction of the resources and research and development, or R&D efforts, that went into the pandemic. In a minute, I'm really looking forward to hearing all the things that you've got up to over the last month in the run up to World TB Day on the 24th of March, which is a big opportunity each year to highlight the need to save lives and to meet the target in the Sustainable Development Goals to end the 3 epidemics, HIV, TB and malaria, by 2030. So alongside your efforts, last month, Results staff were also busy organising an event and reception in Westminster. The All-Party Parliamentary Group, or APPG, for Global TB, which is, as it sounds, made up from MPs of all parties, hosted a reception to launch a new report and to hear from TB stakeholders. The report was called A Stocktake on TB and was actually written by Results' Senior Parliamentary Advocacy Officer on TB, Vinnie Wooding, who is actually joining us on this call, I think. Yes, there he is. The report highlights the gap the international community must make up if we're to achieve the global targets on TB. It calls on the government to commit a generous amount to the Global Fund during the upcoming replenishment campaign, and to restore R&D funding to pre-ODA cut levels. The reception was followed by a debate in Westminster Hall, led by Virendra Sharma MP, in which the Minister announced £6 million in funding for a programme called TB Reach to find new and innovative ways to diagnose TB around the world. We'll share a link in the report and also a link to more information about TB Reach in the chat box. And those links I can see have just gone in. And I know that Vinnie also bust a gut writing briefings for the MPs who took part. And those briefings were also used to inform members of the Scottish Parliament in a debate in Edinburgh, which I think we're going to hear about a little bit more about just in a moment. In addition to that activity, Results staff have also been playing a big part in efforts to coordinate civil society's request for support for the Global Fund's 7th replenishment, which we're going to be hearing about in a few minutes. Now, this takes quite a lot of calculation, and assessment of the political situation in the UK and globally, and also how best to promote the Global Fund's own investment case with the UK government. And we had hoped to be ready to launch our campaign on World TB Day itself, but with the additional cuts that we've experienced in 2021, it's been a particularly tricky conversation this year, and we needed a bit more time to get it right. And I'm happy to announce that we'll be doing this publicly in the next couple of weeks. So on tonight's call, you'll be getting a sneak peek into what we're going to be asking the UK, so that you can play your part in the all-important work of building the political and public support needed to get that resource to the Global Fund. Now, I'm not going to say any more about that right now for fear of stealing our guest speaker's thunder, but I do urge you to take this month's action if you possibly can do that. The pandemic obviously hasn't made it any easier to get hold of your MP, but building political support for and understanding of the issues that we're campaigning on is absolutely vital. This takes time, and I cannot stress how important it is that pressure to take international development issues seriously comes from people in constituencies up and down the country. This is what politicians listen to, as many of you know, and we hope that you'll be able to actually meet your MP if possible, whether that's online or now in person. Now some restrictions have eased. Although, of course, if you can't, a well-written letter is obviously hugely valuable. If you've not done this before, our action materials this month include how-to guides on contacting and visiting your MP. I promise you it's not scary. You don't need to be an expert. All you need to do is to show that the MP that you care and why it matters to you. As always, please do let us know how you get on. And if there's anything we can do to help, please just do get in touch with the Grassroots team. We are there to help. And I think a link to the action materials is also just going to go in the chat box. So next, some internal things I wanted to talk about. Firstly, the Results UK Board of Trustees is recruiting for more people to join our board. Their role is to oversee the delivery of our strategy and to be legally responsible for what we do as an organisation. Now, there are two ways to become a trustee at Results. One of them is that every year we elect someone from this grassroots network to serve on the board for a 3-year period. We'll be sharing the process for this very soon. We haven't got a link for that just yet, but if anyone in your group might like to consider standing, we'll shortly be sharing information about what that involves and the process for how to put yourself forward. The elections for the role will happen at our national conference, which is taking place on the 2nd and 3rd of July. However, most of our board of trustees are recruited in the normal way via an open selection process. All are volunteer roles, and the details of the trustee recruitment process for non-grassroots trustees are going in the chat box in case you know anyone who might be interested in that. Now, lastly from me, just for now, results is also refreshing our strategic plan, another internal process, but an important one. Basically working out what our role as an organisation should be in the fight against global poverty and inequality for the period 2023 to 2030, when the Sustainable Development Goals are supposed to be achieved. Now, a few of you have already had conversations with us about this, and I'd like to say a really big thank you for all your thoughts and advice. It's really important, though, that all of our grassroots volunteer advocates have the chance to feed into this thinking. So we've organised an event to discuss this on Thursday, the 12th of May at 7 p.m. We'll be sending out details of the event very soon, but we do have a link already. So if you'd like to sign up now, you can, using the link that is just appearing in the chat box. It'll be a Google form. So before we go over to hear about the subject of this month's action and hear from our guest speaker, it's time to hear about the advocacy that you've been doing all around the UK over the last month. So I'm going to hand over to Tanya for the usual grassroots update.
Thanks, Naveed. Hi, everyone. It's lovely to have you all join us this evening. This has been a very full month of campaigns and advocacy with World TB Day. And I must say, I've seen some incredible things come through. So thank you to all those who took last month's action to raise awareness for TB and the importance of ending TB. I know Helen was published in her local paper, the Daily Echo, and her church magazine. And over in Linlithgow, William was published for his letter to the Linlithgow Gazette. Jill also published her blog, It All Starts With a Dream, which is a lovely title. In Brighton and Manchester, they did a joint blog which included personal stories from people who had been affected by TB. It was very insightful, and all of these actions were very well informed and powerful. So I will now hand it over to Clervy to tell us a bit about their collaboration and blog. That's good.
Hi, everyone. Hi, I'm Clervy. So I worked on the blog that we did with Manchester. So I'm from the Brighton team. And the two teams came together to try and work on a blog. We'll try and put the link in the chat so that you can all have a read. But it was really fun. We all got together to talk about, to write a blog to raise awareness about TB. And so we broke it down into different sections, what TB is like, case studies, what does it look like in 2020, what can be done, and to try and call our readers to do the action for this month. And then the lovely Rachel from Manchester put all of our sections together into
Oh, Clevie, we've lost you for a second.
On both of our
we're losing you. You're breaking up. I wonder if you might want to turn your video off for a second.
Sorry,
your connection went. We lost the last sort of 30 seconds or so, I think.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, perfectly.
Great. Sorry about that. My connection's a bit unstable. But yeah, so we all got together between Brighton and Manchester to try and write a blog, which the lovely Rachel from Manchester all put together, and we posted on both of our blogs, which was really fun. And then we talked about it on all of our social medias as well. And yeah, it was really great to get to collaborate with another team. So thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you, Clevie. So next, I think we'll go to Kathy, who has also used her voice and made a debate in the Scottish Parliament happen on World TB Day.
Okay, fine. Is it possible to share a screen? Because I've got a few photos if people are interested in that. I can put up, if you could make me, but I can also talk. I mean, the first thing I should say is a big thank you to Naveed and to Vinny for supporting all our work up here. And then to William and Bentley and Wendy, who came along and showed that I wasn't lying about there being a results group, that it wasn't just me bigging myself up, which was one of the things. But I should, if I can't do the, I'll just go through what I have. I've got a few slides, but basically I'll tell you the history of trying to get the Scottish Parliament to acknowledge World TB Day and have a debate has got a 5-year history. And I won't tell you everything that went on over the 5 years, but it started in 2017 when there was a monthly action suggesting that we talk about drug-resistant TB. And William Ross, who's on the call tonight, came and led a discussion, and we had a public meeting, which was reasonably attended, but it alerted our MSP, who's representing my area in the regional area, Miles Briggs, and he lodged a motion in the Scottish Parliament, which we didn't really know at the time that he was doing, but it said something about supporting the results meeting and acknowledging World TB Day. And it got 30 signatures, but it didn't get all party support, so it fell. So a couple of years later, 2019, I got back in touch with him, and he agreed and used the results wording really to recognize World TB Day, and 35 MSPs supported that one, but it again didn't get all party support. But Miles Briggs suggested that he would sponsor an exhibition inside the members area in sometime in the next year for World TB Day. So that set in motion us having to get an exhibition together, and the exhibition and the debate was all going to happen. We got the enough people from all parties. There's 5 parties in the Scottish Parliament, basically. There's Conservatives, SNP, Greens, Lib Dems, and Labour. And we got people from all parties to support it, which was how we could get a members' debate. And so in 2020, it was all set. We'd got all the paperwork, we've got the panels, but COVID happened, so that spoiled that. Then in 2021, we did circulate to the MSPs the slides of the exhibition. So that was a little bit closer. So there was something that happened for World TB Day in 2021, but not exactly everything. But then in 2022, Naveed arrived, and the debate went ahead. The exhibition went up on the 22nd, and it's just right outside the chamber for the where the MSPs go in and out. So it's in a very good position for the politicians to have to pass you if you're going in or out, if they were going in or out of the Parliament. So it was a very good position. And I would say that at least 50, between 50 and 100, and out of 129 politicians did come and speak to me over the 3 days that the exhibition was up. And then we got several people that actually spoke in the debate. And it was quite interesting. Obviously, they also wanted to draw attention to the Scottish aspect of TB in Scotland, and that engaged quite a lot, a bit like Caravi was saying, personal stories of people whose family members had died or been affected, infected, and how things had changed in this country, but not around the world. But at the debate, we got a really good number of people all three parties spoke in the debate, and they all, each of them were totally supportive. There wasn't a vote, because I've learned a lot about motions and how you lobby and stuff. I still don't know everything that there is to know about it, but these members' debates aren't voted on, but they do raise the awareness. And then since then, we've had a few, very interesting follow-up things, including, Richard Leonard, who was the leader of the Labour Party in Scotland until recently. He spoke very, very movingly about his own experience of family members with TB. He's really keen to work with us again. We've William from the Linlithgow Results Group is talking to people about an exhibition that we could get, and potentially that. And Dr. Derek Sloan, who is a leading expert in TB, both in Scotland, where he leads the TB public health all sector group, and also works at St Andrews University on various different things. He got in touch and talked about a conference that's happening on Friday, wants to be more involved with the results team. And it was very good that at the debate, the results did get a mention. That so I think that that it may not have changed anybody's life, but it's all part of the process. So as I say, I don't know exactly what we did in terms of how many lives we've saved, but I would love to think that we may have got a more fertile environment for the discussion of what should be done about TB. And there was a lovely award for Dundee University announced on World TB Day for them to do research into COVID and TB. So that was.
Wow. Thank you so much, Kathy. And I just wanted to say, if this could not be a better illustration of how one person's tenacity can raise this issue in a national parliament. I mean, it's just an amazing and awesome story, and really, really hats off to you for all of your amazing efforts.
Yes, thank you, Kathy. It sounded like it was a really good day as well. So moving on, I think Carrie in Birmingham has already done this month's action meeting with her MP Preet Jill regarding the Global Fund replenishment, and it sounds like she was able to have a very fruitful conversation and have a very good photo op. Last month, we also published a collaborative blog by We the Helpers campaign. The blog explores concerns and ideas for changes to the narrative we use when we talk about tackling poverty and inequality. So I'll put the link in the chat, and we welcome your thoughts on this. For our Stop AIDS collaboration on the Global Fund replenishment, we have a joint lobby day to discuss the Global Fund with MPs in Parliament on the 18th of May. So we'll be sending further information close to the time. the national conference. So lastly, the national conference tickets are now available on Eventbrite, and this will be a free hybrid event on the 2nd to 3rd of July. I'll put the link in the chat for that as well, so you can reserve your tickets. So I'll pass back to Naveed now.
Thank you, Tanya. So now I want to, having heard of all of that, which is just an amazing amount of stuff, thank you all so much for all of your efforts over the last month. So it's now time to introduce the topic of the Global Fund's seventh replenishment and why it's so important for gaining the resources we need to end the 3 epidemics. So I'm absolutely delighted to welcome our guest speaker tonight, who is Laura Zabrogelski. I hope I pronounced that right. Laura is a specialist in donor relations at the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, and actually joins us from Geneva this evening. So Laura, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello, welcome. It's lovely to see you. And thank you for joining us, especially as it's quite late in the evening where you are. So let me just introduce you to the people on this call. You've probably gathered that you're joining our grassroots volunteer campaigners from around the UK who regularly take advocacy actions, mostly aimed at the UK government, to try and persuade them to prioritise the issues that we're working on, including on TB. But we've also got some people joining tonight who are quite new as well. So we'll be asking 3 pre-prepared questions from you. This is our format, which I think you're ready for. But before we ask you those, I was going to do what Aaron always does, which is to ask you if you could share a bit about your background, what kind of motivated you to get involved with the Global Fund and why its work matters to you.
Yes, with much pleasure. But first, I really would like to thank you for inviting me tonight to be with you. It's amazing to hear of how many things you're doing. And I really want to thank you, and I really hope you see the impact that you are having, because especially in the UK, maybe even more than in other donor countries, the work that you are doing with MPs have a concrete and very relevant impact on their decision of the government. So thank you so much for your efforts and for putting time in all the activities you do, and specifically on the Global Fund replenishment. So yes, my name is Laura Zabrogelski. I'm originally from Italy, but I left my country a few years back, working on international development in Africa first, then US, and now Switzerland. I've been working with the Global Fund for the last 6 years, and I have to say that it's an amazing organization, extremely agile, that is dealing with the 3 most the deadliest diseases in the world. So it's very easy, I imagine, to understand why it's fulfilling to work for such an organization. And it's also an organization that is very peculiar, and probably one of the, might be the only, together probably with Gavi, that has a governance that is extremely inclusive. So in our board, we have not only donor countries like the UK, but also implementing countries and communities and civil society. This is fantastic, not only because it's the way to make decisions, but it's also because you really feel that the decisions are taken by the people that know best how to manage this kind of problems. And that, of course, is at the Geneva level, but also in the countries we're working. So it's an amazing organization. I hope that now and in the next few weeks, you will have the opportunity to know more about us. And I'm always very happy to share whatever I know. I prepared for the 3 questions, but now that I heard you talking, I feel that you may be more expert than me. So I hope to be able to respond to the rest.
Thank you so much. That your enthusiasm for the Global Fund is evident. So, thank you for sharing that. So what we're going to do now is open up to the first of those questions. After we do that, we'll open to the floor, and I'm just going to share a number to text. You can either open to speak your question, or put it in the chat box, or you can text it in. So I'm going to try and multitask. I'm not as good at this as Aaron is usually, so I'm going to try. But the number to text into today is 07906 662 571. That's 07906 662 571. And I'll repeat that again in a minute. So let's, before that, go over to the first question, which is pre-arranged, which is, I think, from the London group.
Hello, this is Stephen from the London group. So my question is, why is the Global Fund so important in the fight against TB?
Thank you very much, Stephen. So the Global Fund provides 77% of all the international resources to fight TB. That means that we are the biggest contributor, international contribution to the fight against TB. Overall, just to give you an idea, this is 12% of the entire resources that are currently used to fight TB. And that tells us that the Global Fund is crucial. But at the same time, implementing countries and countries that face TB are the ones that put the majority of the resources. And this is a very important element when we discuss with governments, because we need to let them understand that, of course, we are asking donor countries to provide funds, but actually the countries that are facing the disease are the ones that put a lot of these resources on the table first. And the Global Fund has a role to play in that sense as well, because we have a policy that asks implementing countries to increase their resources to fight HIV, TB, and malaria. So by funding the Global Fund, donor countries are also increasing the domestic resources to fight these diseases. Even before COVID, TB was not on track to reach the targets that for the Agenda 2030. You can imagine after COVID, it's even worse. TB is probably among the 3 diseases the one that had a major impact from the pandemic for different reasons, not least the fact that the COVID and TB have symptoms that are quite similar. And the resources that were before used for fighting TB have been used also for COVID. And so in a context where resources are limited, that had an impact on the ability of countries to respond to TB. And for the first time in the history of the Global Fund, we saw that key data on TB decreasing. And that's terrible, actually. So there is a lot to do. We have seen TB cases treated falling by over 1 million people, and that's 18% decrease. So the data are really terrible, and the action should be taken now. The other element is that the Global Fund is investing not only in TB, but specifically in drug-resistant TB, and on that, the Global Fund is the major funder. I imagine you know how difficult it is to treat TB that is resistant to drugs. It's very difficult to catch it, to diagnostic, and also to be able then to really make people follow the treatment, because the treatments are extremely long and extremely painful. In these cases, many of the treatments have 2 years of treatments, and they are very, very heavy on the body of the people. So they need to be followed by doctors, and that requires resources. And the Global Fund is the only international organization that is really putting a lot of funds on that. I was saying that the COVID pandemic has had a huge impact on TB. At the same time, I have to say that there were also examples of innovation and try to react, to adapt to the pandemic. And we have seen in many countries the ability to combine testing for TB and COVID, for instance. Other examples of flexibilities that have been used by countries to respond to both diseases at the same time. The Global Fund has been very fast to try to respond to COVID-19. We have created a response that is called C19RM. In the last 2 years, we were able to deploy additional $4 billion for that. And I'm happy to share that the UK has been one of the contributors to the C19RM response, pledging 60 million very recently for that. Through that response, the Global Fund has been the primary provider of everything that is not vaccines, so PPEs, diagnostics, and therapeutics, and particularly oxygen, but has also funded programs to mitigate the impact on the three diseases. And this is what I was referring before. So the ability of countries to find ways to respond to both pandemics at the same time. Just to give you an example, we saw, for instance, in Bangladesh, the COVID pandemic had a huge impact in the ability of the country to respond to TB cases, and there was a drop of 22% of cases notification, and that was, of course, very difficult in the first phase. In the second year, they were able to put in place activities that not only made them increase again the notification rate, but actually they improved their notification rate. And this is very much due to the fact that the Global Fund was there, able to fund this kind of experiments. Of course, a government that was ready to explore different ways to do COVID and TB responses at the same time.
Can I stop you there for a second? Thank you so much for setting out the kind of role of the Global Fund in the bigger picture. I think that's really clear, and that example of Bangladesh, I think, really does show the relationship with the countries. For some of you who were probably on the call last month, you also will have heard a bit more about the broader TB response from our guest speaker last month, Dr. Uvi Naidu. Maybe, Laura, if there's some things you didn't get out in that answer, we can maybe come back to a bit later on. I was wondering if we could move on to the second question. I want to make sure we've got a bit of time left at the end for people's questions. So I'm going to hand it over to the Cheshire group, I think, to ask the next question.
Hello, I'm Tyra. Laura, what is the process for replenishing the Global Fund in 2022?
Thank you for this question. So the Global Fund has a 3-year cycle, and every 3 years we ask donors to provide us the funds for the following 3 years. We have a 3-year cycle because we want to be able to tell countries how much money they will have for following 3 years. That allows them to plan in advance and be sure that they will have enough funds to implement their strategy for the following three years. Before having the conference where we ask donors to pledge their contribution for the following 3 years, we have an investment case. This investment case was launched in February in Africa, actually. The preparatory meeting was hosted by 5 African presidents. It was Kenya, DRC, Rwanda, Senegal, and South Africa. And they presented this document that I hope you will have the chance to see, that set our ambition for the next 3 years. And you may have seen that the ask for the next 3 years is 18 billions. This figure doesn't come from our desire to raise more money, but is the combination of the needs that are as described by technical partners like WHO, UNAIDS, and others. And it's what is needed for the Global Fund to be able to contribute, to go back and to be on track to achieve the Agenda 2030. And this is very important because if we don't achieve that target, in a way, we are saying that we are not serious about the targets that we have put to ourselves and we all agreed in the Agenda 2030. So the investment case is the document we are sharing with donors, we are discussing with donors. We had a thorough discussion with the UK government, for instance, on that, to make sure that they understood the different elements. And you may be aware that there are elements related to the 3 diseases, one related to health system strengthening and pandemic preparedness. So right now we are going around to all donors, explaining the investment case and help them preparing for the conference that will take place in September in the US. The replenishment this time around is hosted by the Biden administration. And this is very important because it's a sign of confidence in the Global Fund. And the host countries has a role in trying to share with the other donors why they do it and try to push them to be ambitious as they have been. I don't know if you had the opportunity to see, but there was the presidential budget in the US was presented a few weeks ago. And in that budget, the Biden administration was very clear in saying that they are pledging to provide $2 billion every year for the 3 years of the replenishment. So $6 billion in total. This is very important, of course. And there is an additional element that is crucial for the UK. The US has a regulation, it's actually in their law, that they cannot give to the Global Fund more than 1/3 of the funds. And this comes from the idea that they should not be a donor that is putting the majority of the funds, and it's trying to push other donors to contribute more. So if we are not able to have other donors to step up in the way that the US government has done, we risk to lose money that currently the US government has pledged already for the Global Fund, but may not be able to give it to us.
Thank you so much. I'm sure we're going to come back to that sort of the role of the different the host government and the UK government in the questions. Let's move on to the third question now, which was from Norwich, I believe.
Yes. Hi, Laura. My name's Mark from the Norwich Group. My question is, why is advocacy in the UK so important, and how can we as campaigners support the Global Fund to reach their target?
Thank you, Mark. So the UK is the 3rd largest donor of the Global Fund, 2nd largest donor in the last 2 replenishments. It has been a donor for the fund since the creation of the Global Fund, and that entails not only funds, of course, but also a level of engagement in our governance in Geneva, but also in the countries that has been amazing. And as an organization, we have improved the way we are working, thanks to the help of colleagues in FCDO that have pushed us to be better in health system strengthening, in transparency, in many, many aspects. I've seen it myself. So we need to have a UK fully involved in the Global Fund, as they have been in the past 20 years. So it's a matter of funds and it's a matter of commitment. As I was saying, the UK is a case where grassroots advocates like you really have impact. And we see MPs able to change or influence position taken by the governments because they are very influential. So I think, especially in the case of the UK, having advocates like you in the country is extremely, extremely important. In addition, the UK is a leader in global health, has always been, and is still recognized as an important leader in this area. So if we are not able to have a pledge in line with the investment case from the UK, there is a risk that other donors will also be less ambitious. And that's something we cannot allow to happen. So it's super important that we share all the arguments we have, and there are many, I know that there are discussions about changing some of the priorities of the government in development. I have to say, even if those priorities are changed, based on what I'm hearing and reading in the newspapers, the Global Fund is working in all the priorities that are mentioned by the government, like, for instance, women and girls. So we have the arguments. We just need to make sure that we go out, we talk to people, and we really explain well what are the advantages of the UK in being engaged in the work of the Global Fund, not least the pandemic preparedness work. That is key. We have been doing that in the past, and we will do it even more in the future.
Thank you for that, Laura. I'm sure we'll come back to that idea of the Global Fund against the kind of with changing UK government priorities. It's something that Results has been concerned about and tracking over the last couple of years, and it's certainly been something that we've been paying a lot of attention to. It's definitely the background to this this kind of moment that we're at now with the Global Fund replenishment. So thank you for the answers to the opening questions. I'm now going to open up the floor to anybody. So as I said earlier, just unmute yourself and say who you are and ask your question. Alternatively, you can put it in the chat box if you prefer. And I do also have that my text open. So the phone number for that one again is, it was earlier in the chat, but it's 07906 662 571. So we've got a good few minutes to basically just open up to everybody. And I see Peter's got his hand up, so I'm going to go over to you first, Pete.
I was looking for the button that said raise your hand, but I can't find it.
Ah, that's harder.
Yeah.
It's there somewhere.
Okay, so my MP is the Minister for Levelling Up, which, yeah, I won't go there. If I'm to meet her and present her with a fair request, as best as I can make it, I know that I'm going to be, well, I don't know, I'm most likely going to be met with sort of formulaic government blather. And I want to know where, it needn't be in this call, but I would like to know how to be coached in how to have a conversation with somebody who is not normal. I mean, you know, you can't be normal and be a minister. It's impossible. And you know, I understand that and I feel sympathy. However, there has to be a way to have a conversation that actually encourages and promotes the truth. And I'd just like to know how to speak to a minister so that I can actually get her to speak the truth. I'm not saying she'll lie, but I'm saying that she will evade. I'm fairly sure. And she will say, well, we do this, we do that, we do the other. And I'll say, but how about this? And she'll say, well, we do this, we do that, we do the other. And I'll say, no, I'm asking a specific question. So I know that if I become insistent, I'm only going to create a reaction and I'm not going to get what I want. So it's like learning how to speak. We should have that in the national conference. We should have workshops on how to speak to abnormal people. That's my question.
Certainly bear that in mind, Pete. We're putting together the agenda for that right now. So I know that the Global Fund will be talking to governments all the time. So I'm going to ask Laura to address that question, maybe in sort of from your perspective. We've also got Vinny on the call who does work with parliamentarians on a pretty regular basis. And I don't want to put you on the spot, Vinny, but if you feel you want to weigh in as well on the more kind of specific kind of UK parliamentarian side, then maybe you could add a few words as well. So to Laura first.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I have the answer to that. In a way, talking about health is something that should at least be very close to each of us. And unfortunately in life, we will all experience in a way or another how difficult it is to have a disease. So this is a connection that can work with some of the people we are talking to. And I heard before there was someone that had a specific connection with TB. And when you have it, or you have people close to you with such a disease, then of course you are more keen to hear. We had the COVID pandemic, we still have it, and we have seen, each of us, how difficult it is. So I don't have any answer, but if we are not able to talk to people now about the right to health, we have a big issue, I think. So I hope we find a way, maybe not with all of them, but with many of them, to discuss this issue.
Thanks, Laura. Vinny, did you have anything to add there quickly?
Yeah, I mean, I guess, it goes without saying that we've kind of already started our work with parliamentarians on the Global Fund Replenishment campaign. So we've been working for about 6 months now, and we've already held, if you include the World TB Day event, we've held 3 events since November, which have been either solely focused on the Global Fund or which have incorporated quite a lot of Global Fund messaging. So one of the things, I guess, to sort of talk to Peter's point, one of the things that we find works quite well is just basically talking almost like statistically about how effective the Global Fund is. You know, in the fact they've saved 44 million lives since 2002. You know, saying things like they constitute 77% of the TB funding. Those kind of really key top-level statistics I find are really engage parliamentarians quite easily. And one of the things that we did with our briefings for World TB Day, we kind of put those things real front and centre. So I think when you are speaking to parliamentarians or you're writing to parliamentarians, getting those kind of like key statistics in, top level things, kind of things that they can then turn into a question straight away to the government, and you know, and ask why this is the case, or how this is the case, or how we're going to rectify said thing. But yeah, Peter, I'm happy to do something more widely at conference if you want about parliamentary engagement.
Thanks, Vinny. So Pete, your plea, really heartfelt plea, heard there, I think. We probably need to move on now, but definitely, you know, getting the message through to the parliamentarians, even if, you know, like you've got a government minister in your constituency who's obviously going to not say what you want. That's kind of, you know, getting the message across is the important thing. But we will come back to that, I'm sure. So thank you for raising that. I want to move on to the question in the chat next, which is from Kush, which is, how's this year's ask for the government of 1.8 billion compared with previous funding rounds? And have they given any indication about how far they're considering committing to this year? And that kind of links with the next one in the chat box from Carrie. Her MP, who she met yesterday, I believe, was that the government might find that 1.8 billion too much. So can we just, that might be, again, not necessarily just for Laura, maybe Vinny as well, but to have a think about that 1.8 billion, which is obviously a lot more than the last round in 2019, which was 1.4 billion, but obviously the needs have very much gone up since then. So Laura, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, as I said, the 18 billion is really coming from the current situation and where we need to go to be able to achieve the targets that we have given ourselves in the Agenda 2030. So from our perspective, there is no choice. It would be nicer to ask for a lower figure, but unfortunately it's not possible. And I think the investment case is very clear, and the Global Fund is trying to be as clear as we can with all donors. So of course, this conversation is happening with the UK, but with all the other donors, and we hope to bring in additional donors as well. It's not an easy discussion, but unfortunately a discussion we need to have. And I really hope the UK government will be able to respond to all the arguments we have that are strong arguments, and I'm sure that the UK government is taking in consideration all the arguments we are making, because they are part of the Global Fund partnership, and they have been for the last 20 years. So we are in the middle of the work, and we need to push more. And the figure is that one, unfortunately, because we had COVID and we need to regain what we lost due to the pandemic.
Thank you, Laura. We're coming close to the top of the hour, so I see that Kathy's patiently had her hand up for a very long time, so I'm going to hand over to Kathy for a question now.
Thanks very much. It's very interesting, and as you might have heard, I'm particularly interested in TB, but I'm also quite interested in how the decision about it being those 3 diseases only, because as you were talking about the combination of COVID and TB treatments, you've been working on that as Global Fund, and can you expand it? And the other thing is, why does TB get much less as well? That we know from looking at TB. I know that malaria is also neglected, but why isn't TB getting a bigger share?
Yeah, thank you. So why HIV, TB, and malaria? Because 20 years ago, the response to HIV started in the streets by grassroots advocates like you, and based on their screaming in the streets, they were able to push the different governments to take into consideration the idea of create a fund. At that point, though, people like Kofi Annan and others thought that, of course, it was needed for HIV, but there were other 2 diseases that were killing people around the world, in low and middle income countries particularly, and that were malaria and TB. And so they thought, let's have it, but let's expand it to TB and malaria. And since then, we have been working on these 3 diseases with a lot of work also on health system strengthening. That is, in a way, having impact beyond the 3 diseases. And then the COVID pandemic struck, and it was very clear from the beginning that we had to do something because there was an indirect impact on our diseases that we could not avoid seeing. So we put together this C19RM response that I have described to you, with the idea to mitigate the impact. And then more and more we became engaged in the global response to COVID only. As I said, we have a very important role that we played in the response that is not vaccine related, but all the rest that is huge, because as we all know, vaccines alone, unfortunately, cannot be the only solution. So we need a combination of tools. And that's something we have learned from TB, HIV, and malaria. So in a way, it was also an opportunity to use the lesson learned from 20 years of activities with these 3 diseases to apply them on COVID-19. I have to say that the COVID-19 is not included in the investment case. No, of course, we will keep working on the COVID-19 response until it's needed, and unfortunately, it's still needed. But the investment case covers only the 3 diseases plus health system strengthening. The other point you were mentioning, why TB is getting so little. I think there is a change this time around. There was a decision of our board a few months back in relation to what we call the disease split. So how much funds each disease takes in the replenishment. And the decision was to increase the funds for TB if from 12 billions. So if we are able to reach 12 billions, from there onwards, the percentage of funds for TB will increase. That's another additional reasons why a successful replenishment of 18 billions is very important for the 3 diseases, but particularly for TB. And maybe it's something we can use in our advocacy with MPs, particularly interested in TB, because it will really make a difference if we are able to reach the target. And I think they have calculated that there will be an increase of 40% of what we are able to give to TB. So very important.
Thank you, Laura. We're getting into some quite technical areas there, but that is really important to note that a really solid replenishment is particularly important for TB this time around. We've come to 9 o'clock. We've just gone over, in fact, and I'm aware that there's some really interesting chat in the chat box that we haven't got time to explore any further. Really kicked off by that point that Pete, you made about getting good answers or getting answers from our MPs. And for those of you who haven't maybe engaged with your MP much before, I would just say, don't be scared. Do it, have a go, and you're there to put a case. They may not necessarily give you the answers you want, but they will, on your request, forward the information on and that you've given to the minister in charge. And then going back to Kush's point, we don't know at this point how much they're prepared to give. We wish we did know, but that's the nature of negotiations, that you don't know. We've explored that this is a particularly big challenge, this ask, particularly against the background of the aid cuts. But I think Laura's made it really, really clear that the need in the world is just so much bigger now, that is really an ask that we have to make. The moral case is there, and you guys are in a position where you can say, look, this is what's absolutely needed, and we want you as politicians to step up. So I'm sorry we haven't explored that any further, but that's a really good conversation in the chat box, and thank you for everybody who's engaged with that. And clearly we need to come back to this in the coming months. So we've run out of time now, and I'd like to really warmly thank you, Laura, for sharing your inside knowledge and expertise of the Global Fund. Thank you so much. And thank you to everybody, as always, for your great questions. And as I say, I hope you'll feel inspired to take the action this month to get this really, really important replenishment to happen and to raise that $18 billion that the Global Fund needs to get back on track in the fight against these three diseases. I hope it's really clear why this matters in the real world and how these funds are vital for helping countries overcome poverty and disease. So good luck with your efforts this month. As always, please do share with us. Goodbye for now, and I look forward to seeing you again at the next conference call, which will be on Tuesday, the 3rd of May. So we're going to call it a day there, and it's great to see you all as always, and enjoy the rest of your evenings.
Thank you.